Yes, folks, it's Thursday. I'm Fred McMurray. It's 2 p.m. and that's got to be the smoothest intro we've had with the automation. This is...
Hey!
Hello.
Welcome to Pillars of Franchising. Happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve and welcome to Pillars of Franchising, where we are going to talk to Carolyn Thurston of Wisdom Senior Care. We're very excited about that.
Oh yeah, she's been on in the past, but she's got a lot of stuff to talk about today that's been changing, ever changing. And for those of you who've been following her, certainly you can see her in our digital magazine, right? She's a regular contributor.
We had her on the cover recently, and we talked a little bit about some of the things that we're going to talk about today in terms of employee engagement and retention and benefits and culture and training and all of the things that make that go better.
Well, I think what's interesting about that, speaking of all of those things. So yesterday, I was so excited. I went out to get the mail, and in my mailbox was my Harvard Business Review. And sometimes I get really excited, sometimes not so much, right? Sometimes it's kind of heavy reading. But on the cover, it said, "What does your company really stand for?" And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so about what we're talking about today, right? And so one of the big stories is, what does your company really stand for? And aligning what matters to you as an organization with what matters to your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy cow, not only does that align with what Wisdom Senior Care is doing, not only does it align with what we've talked about with Jerry and Karen, but it's just all the buzz right now. And it really has kind of sparked when we went to flexible work time or workspace, so to speak, kind of all off of COVID, and really the employees being more in charge than the companies. Funny story, I went in yesterday to Home Depot, my old stomping ground, and I had talked with somebody my son was interviewing, and I said, "Oh, well, what shift are you working?" to one of the managers, and he said, "Oh, I'm the closing manager." And I said, "What, you mean like you always close?" And he said, "Yeah, we have set shifts now." And I'm like, "Get out. We used to work, like 50, 60 hours a week, and you might close one night until midnight, and you were back at 4:30 a.m. to open the store." And he goes, "Oh no, we don't do that anymore. We all have set shifts." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we found it's much better. We can actually get time with our employees and work on training and developing them and really be more engaged in our departments if we have set hours." And I thought, man, why couldn't they have thought of that 30 years ago?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think that the point of that is that there's been such a reevaluation going on. I do a lot of writing for people who are business owners in my personal business, and this has been a hot topic of conversation, and what people are doing right and what they're doing wrong. And engagement and retention is a huge thing, and setting clear boundaries. And one guy who's an HR consultant was talking about people who don't set policy around hybrid work. And so the expectations are unclear. And so employees feel uncertain about, what is the expectation of me? Is it really okay that I work from home? Is it not? How often should I be in the office? And if one employee is able to work from home and another is not, that might be the nature of the job, but you've got to have clear, defined policy about that. And so making those, it all comes down to communication, really. A lot of it does. And what this Harvard Business Review article is talking about is that when your whole entire team has an alignment of values, everybody's buying in, everybody's happier, and it could be the equivalent emotional value of getting a 40% raise. That's how much it matters.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing is they also mentioned that you see less turnover, not only in the regular ranks, but in CEOs, if they feel like they are aligned with the corporate values. And they talked a lot about what do you stand for and what binds us to one another and to the community. And, I think that's interesting when you talk about that in franchising, right? So my brand, our thing that binds us to the community is that we give back to victims of domestic violence, which it's still that month, right? It's still October. And that to me was a very big thing. Well, I happen to have a group of employees that many of them know someone or have been impacted by domestic violence. And so that is a common thing that we can bond together on and stand behind, supporting victims of domestic violence. So that's one of the cultural value sharing things that we do that we can talk about that everybody's impacted on. And, I think it's really important to find those things and to make sure that you not only, walk the talk, but not only talk the talk, but you walk the talk, right? Because it's like Karen always talks about, it's one thing to say things, it's another thing to do them. So
right. And one interesting thing too, I wanted to pull out was it talks about everybody's working on their DEI policies and diversity, equity, inclusion, which is very, very important. But it said you don't necessarily want diversity of values,
right?
Because then you have everybody competing with each other over different values that are important. And I thought, that is so true, because you cannot have a cohesive team if you're not all fighting the same battle within the work process and headed toward the same goal with the same intent and integrities. Beliefs are different. Those are changeable and fluid. Values are set in stone. And if you have a rogue person over there who's fighting against what you're trying to accomplish, it's never going to work. So that's another thing that I thought was a really interesting distinction that I had not articulated in my own mind.
Yeah,
that I think is really important.
I think that there's, for those of you who think, oh my God, Harvard Business Review, like I just can't get through that magazine. It's just way too deep. And I used to think that too. And trust me, I never read it cover to cover. I pick out what I can digest. But there is a 5-step process of values alignment. So it's the values alignment process, and it does a breakdown of step 1 through 5. It's very comprehensive, super easy. They do some very I call it the plain English version, so it's not hard to understand. So that's what I want to share with you for a word on the street. Again, Harvard Business Review just got in my mailbox yesterday. And with that, let's welcome our lovely guest. Ooh, and my new co-host for the day, but he's on mute. So I'll have to introduce my other $1 Million Mentor friend named Jerry Akers.
I just pulled an Elizabeth. I am so embarrassed. I was so excited to introduce Carolyn that I didn't check my mute. So I apologize to everybody. Well, listeners, we have a true treat for you today. One of my very best friends, Carolyn Thurston with Wisdom Care, is on with us today. And Carolyn, I cannot do justice to your introduction because you have such a phenomenal background and an amazing company. So I want to turn it back to you. And I wish you'd tell our listeners just a little bit about you and your company.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited about being here with everyone. I am Carolyn Thurston. I am the founder and CEO of Wisdom Senior Care. Wisdom Senior Care was started in 2006. It was initially started just because I had a passion for working with the senior population. I had no intent at that time on franchising. It took me a long time to even step out and open Wisdom up. Just a little bit of my background. My father was in the military, so I always appreciate any veterans, and I never forget their families because I was one, a daughter who traveled anywhere from 6 months. The longest we stayed anywhere was 3 years. So I understand the sacrifices that are made. But during that opportunity, I was able to go to other countries and see how people took care of their senior population. And that's where in the 11th grade, the seed, the name of Wisdom came to me. But I thought it was going to be a daycare for the senior population. And at that time, I'll tell you how old I am. In the 80s, there was no daycares for the seniors at that time. So I told my mother, who was my biggest cheerleader, God has given me a name of my business. It's going to be Wisdom. She said, great, you can do it. But you see, it took me from the 80s to 2006 before I even, and actually it was 2005 before I stepped out. I took the step to do that. So I kept having the urge to, I went to nursing school, just make a long story short. I have a background as a registered nurse, came out still wanting to help the senior population till one night I had enough. I kept having this urge. I said, what's one thing that I can do? Because I used the excuse, and a lot of people are like this, Jerry, and everyone here, they will say, I don't have the know-how. I had no business experience. I don't have the money. So I said, you know what? It only cost at the time $350 for me to fill out an application, send that into the state. And look, for $350, Wisdom Senior Care was developed. And I just started working that. And in 2017 is where I learned about franchising. So now we're on a mission to make awareness to other people that franchising is a great opportunity for business growth, for generational wealth. And we started out on this journey in 2017. So we currently have helped now about 13, 14 new franchisees. So we're excited to be able to state that and be able to even make other people more aware of the opportunity.
Carolyn, how do you define a good candidate? Because you're an RN, or you've been an RN. Are you looking for people who have that background, or how do you find the right fit?
And I love how you put that. And we get that question asked a lot because it's not about the nursing. Actually, all of our franchisees, none of them were nurses, right? But what we do, and it's what you, Elizabeth, you and Kristin were talking about, is those core values. We have a set of core values, and the number one core value that I look for with any potential franchisee is compassion. They have to have compassion. And can I share this with you guys? Our number one franchisee is a gentleman who is above 6 feet tall. He's an Asian gentleman. And I knew I had gotten the right franchisee when we went out to go with him to see a client who was in hospice. I saw this guy get down on his knees.
Oh.
He held this lady's hands, and it just confirmed to me how important that compassion is, because when the owners have that, it's going to go down to all the way to the clients that we're actually serving.
Carolyn, that story does not surprise me at all. And I'll tell you, for anybody that doesn't know you and your partner, Charles, that wonderful man that you're married to, you two are known throughout franchising as the people that are compassionate and passionate, people that are willing to give back, that have a friendly smile to everybody. So the fact that you use that as a part of your vetting process and the story you told about that gentleman, I mean, that's you in a nutshell. That truly, I think, defines your organization. And for anybody thinking about that kind of a field, they just couldn't match up with a better person or persons to do that than you and Charles.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that.
So Carolyn, where did you get started with your business? Where are your major markets that you've grown in, and where are you looking to go next?
Yeah, that's a good question. So North Carolina is where most of our franchisees are. Wisdom Senior Care was started in Durham, North Carolina, and we were helping seniors in Durham and Chapel Hill. And so right now we have a lot of different offices in the whole North Carolina. We are in Savannah, Georgia. We're looking at Atlanta now. Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Miami, New York on Long Island, New York. So those are some of the places that we currently are.
So
Carolyn, I'm sorry, Kristin.
No, go ahead, Jerry.
So you met the lovely Karen, who is our leadership guru. And I want to focus this a little bit on, your organization deals with the senior population, and there's a lot of baggage that goes with that, a lot of struggles, mainly because of health, even mental issues with the senior population, which I would think is very stressful on your franchisees and their people. So how do you keep the motivation and the energy up and keep rekindling that passion in your franchisees in those situations?
Yeah, so I think one thing to remember, because we're looking for franchisees who, first of all, have a compassion for the seniors, they also have a compassion for the caregivers, who we call skilled experts. And we call them skilled experts because we truly value what they do. When they go into a home, it takes skill to be able to go into someone's personal space. And I don't know about you guys, the way I am, I just don't invite someone over to my home. If you're invited to my home, that means you have a special place. So with that being said, our franchisees have to have a compassion for the seniors and their family, but also for those skilled experts. So when they look at this, they're listening to both sides. And you're right, it can get very stressful. But one thing that we've done is help them be able to match the skilled expert with the right type of caregiver, and also listening, right? Listening is so key. So not only to what people are verbally saying, but what they're not saying, because some of our caregivers, they give so much that they tend to get burned out. And I'll give you guys an example. We deal with a lot of death in what we deal with. And so my motto is you just keep moving forward, right? This is a part we've helped them to. Our goal is to help the senior stay at home. But you know what I realized? Not everyone operates like that, like I do. Some people need to be able to come together and talk about what they're feeling. So what we did as an organization is we developed what we call a chaplaincy program, and it's part of our nonprofit, which is Wisdom Missions Worldwide, where our franchisees are able to call this chaplain in to talk with the whole team. They have these sessions where they're able to talk, and that's what's helping them be able to stay motivated, because the franchisees feel like, hey, I'm making a difference in my skilled experts' lives and not just the clients. So I think when they get this feedback, that's what's keeping them, Jerry, motivated, because they see that they're truly making a difference.
Now, Kristin wants to ask a question, but I'm going to do a follow-up really quick before she gets in. I can see on her face she was primed, but, I got to tell you a story. You started this part of it with teaching people to listen. And an old saying I've used my entire life is the good Lord bless you with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and use it in the same percentage, right? The same ratio. And I literally heard that in Charles's voice when I was thinking that, because I can just picture him saying that to some of your people. Is that accurate?
It's very accurate. That tells you it's accurate. He does it truly. Yeah, you're right. I
had to get Charles in here somewhere. Go ahead, Kristin.
No.
Well, if you didn't, you'd be in trouble, Jerry.
I know.
So Carolyn, can you tell us, obviously we talked about employee engagement and the troubles and trials and tribulations everybody's been having in terms of getting and keeping help. What are some of the things? I know you've been doing some really exciting things to help attract and really grow talent in your organization. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we focus in on is that we want people to come in to our organization with a growth mindset. So even prior to COVID, we did a lot of research, really talking to skilled experts and finding out what is it that you want. And look, we were doing this prior to COVID even happening, right? We would have scheduled meetings because we wanted to hear what did they need. And a lot of them was saying, we just want to know that we have an opportunity to grow. Great. That's our culture. That's Wisdom's culture. Our franchisees are creating a place where you can come on board. Maybe you come on and you're a skilled expert working 20 hours a week. Then you get an opportunity to come in and be a receptionist. And they show them in orientation a growth plan. Mm-hmm. And there's 3 different ways they can go. So they're telling them at the very beginning that if this is a place where you say you want to grow, one of our core values is loyalty. So we say loyalty doesn't just come like overnight. It takes time and interaction. But if you want a place, we'll be loyal to you, you can be loyal in return. So we really teach growth from within. And we have one franchisee who right in the middle of COVID, she started with Wisdom as a caregiver. She grew in every aspect of Wisdom. And in 2020, she opened her own Wisdom franchise.
That's awesome. I was going to ask, that was going to be my follow-up question. How long do you think that'll take? And you've already had it happen.
Yep. And not only that, you know what's exciting is that we're now having more people because they're hearing her story. And we hear each franchisee say they at their orientation, because we want them to know this at the beginning, what the opportunity is. And people are saying, you know what? I want to do that. I want to be like that. So now we're looking at actually putting in place a really formal pathway for people to go through that process.
Well, Carolyn, you let Miss Patricia know that I'm officially calling her out, because I understand we've been trying to get her on the show to tell her success story.
Okay.
So this is now official. The world is hearing.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful story. It's a true story of someone who just worked really hard through, and what can happen with that process when they're given an opportunity, what can happen.
That's awesome.
Carolyn, one of the franchise systems that I'm affiliated with has a system like that in place where an employee can grow into a franchisee. Works out quite well, and it acts as not only an attractant for the right kinds of people to come in and work for a franchisee, but also because it's a formal pathway, then both the franchisee and the employee kind of have an idea of the progression that everybody has to go through, and maybe a little bit even about the timing of it. So the fact that you have already done that, frankly, for as young as your organization is off the charts. And that you are already making plans to start a formal program is frankly kind of unheard of. But it wouldn't surprise me with you and Charles doing that, because that's part of who you are. And I see it as a franchisor. I see it as a pathway to growing my franchisee group fairly quickly through people that are already passionate, already vetted, already understand the system, and there's a process in place where they buy into it and move on. So it makes your part of it much easier and more fulfilling too, I would think.
It does, Jerry. And the other thing, not just even the franchise, if someone doesn't want to become a franchisee, what we're experiencing, maybe some people, they have been given that opportunity and they'll say, no, that's not what I want to do. I have a lady who started with us in 2007, and both of them were given the opportunity at the same time. One chose to be a franchisee. The other said, no, that's not with me. I want to grow with the office. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Now, that's loyalty there. Yeah. So you know what she's doing, Jerry? She's part of our franchisor system. And so you get 2 out of 1. There's always a place for people.
I think that's what's exciting about being such a new emerging brand, is that, now she can be one of your support people to help other people. So we've talked about the really important thing and the main driver of selecting your franchisees. And I think that that's really important. We remind people all the time that to be a franchisee, a really good quality franchise system isn't going to just award you one because you have money. So don't come into franchising thinking you're just going to go buy a brand, because the good quality brands are not going to do that, right? Nope. And obviously here we've heard you need to be vetted and you need to be compassionate, hardworking, and share the same values. Now, beyond that, Carolyn, tell us what are you talking in terms of franchising fees and working capital? What does somebody need to do if they just love you like we do?
So if someone just loves us and they feel the culture and they want to be a part of, we our initial franchise fee is $45,000. Okay. Now we do recommend that people have another $65,000 to $70,000 for working capital. Okay. Now we are looking for franchisees who are really wanting to commit 100%. So it's pretty much them being owner operators at the beginning. And that way they're learning all the aspects of that business. But this is the key thing. We're not wanting you to come and stay that way. We're helping show you how to develop your team. Okay. So as you're going along, you're starting to develop your team and you're working your way out of being an employee of it, because we don't want you working in your business. We want you working on your business. So we help to show them how to be able to do that. Therefore, you can travel like people. I mean, we're not that large yet, but people ask me all the time, well, who's doing this or how's this working? We wouldn't be able, Charles and I, Jerry, we wouldn't be able to go and do the things we're doing if it all depended on us. But it's because we've developed teams, processes, and things are in place that allows us. It's almost like we had to, they got rid of us, right? They don't need us anymore, right? And you think, but really that's what it is. And that's when you truly have a business. So that's what we are looking for, is that type of a person. And truly wanting to make a difference in your local community by helping the seniors, but also you're adding employment and changing skilled experts' lives as well.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either, Carolyn. But what you're saying is, I think, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but so you want an owner operator, so they would have basically one location under a franchise. But then as they work themselves out of a job, which is what you just described for yourselves, then they would have the opportunity to buy another location and continue to expand that way.
Yeah. Can I share a quick story with you? My daughter, which we're creating some generational wealth, she is the one who does everything with our corporate office. Okay. Now she has hit a milestone, which I never, and that's why I say you never say never, thought would be able to be achieved. Oh my gosh, she does better when I'm not there, right? So now what she's getting the opportunity is to, she's working on a second location now. So what you explained is right there, it's available. And then you're even they're learning to do it even at what do I want to say, not working hard, but at a smarter level, right? How to do that. Yeah.
That's a pretty natural progression for most franchise systems, that, they really want you to start kind of small to prove that you can do it and you can handle it. Yours is a little different because of the passion, because not all franchise systems necessarily care about that. But I do like the fact that you understand and have a plan in place for them to continue to grow once they get their organization up and running, because many people want to go beyond that first footprint and continue to expand. So the follow-up question to that, Carolyn, is what states are you looking to go into? I understand there's supply issues and support issues as you get further away from North Carolina, where you're located, but for you to continue to grow, you don't have any choice. You'll have to keep going. So what's your growth plan?
Yeah. So this is kind of funny, because if Charles was here, Charles would tell you, and this is everybody that knows Charles, we'll go wherever, right? That's what he would tell you. But in my mind, that's why it's good to have a team, because we keep everybody balanced. But very strategically, you can see how our growth has been going. And we're pretty much going up the East Coast. We do get conversations with a lot of people in Texas, and Arizona. Those are just some of those places. But wherever we do hit, Jerry, we look at, like, let's say if we're in Arizona, the focus is not just one, then that becomes our area that we need to go ahead and develop, right, while we're there. So right now, the hot spots that we are in is the Georgia and Savannah right now are the key areas that we're focusing in on. Not to say if someone's out there and they're not in those areas and you would like Wisdom to come to that, we're open. Charles would love to speak with you.
Listen, Charles and I are going to have to talk because the rural states in the Midwest are aging really quick. So.
Yeah. And he will be there. He would say, we're here. We'll get that team. And what's interesting, because of remote and all of that, we do have team members that are out in the Midwest too. So it's not a challenge as well. So
that's awesome. And Carolyn, so one of the last questions I have for you. So people who are like, okay, so now I've got this. I understand the cost. I know what they're looking for. This all sounds really great. But if I go and I sign one, what does the training look like for somebody to do this? Because the job's a pretty big job.
It is a pretty big job. And what we provide is a 2-week training. Okay. Nice. So we say it equals out to about 80 hours. So there are 40 hours of theory. Okay. Then we have 40 hours of what we call hands-on. And the hands-on is you come to our corporate office and you work every part of that business, right? You see every point, even all the way down to what your skilled experts are doing into the home. So they get that opportunity, but the training doesn't stop there. So then what happens is that we have our team come to their location. And then our team is making sure they're getting their office set up, setting up strategic partners. So we're continuously working with them. And then every week, our new franchisees meet with their franchise coach and business developer. And they do that on a weekly process for a year. That we're providing that, but they can have access to help. We have a brand standard team. They're just a call, or we call it a ticket process away. There's always people around to be able to help them. And after they've been in for a year, then they go to what we call monthly, unless some urgencies come up that we're touching in basis and things like that. We hold quarterly meetings. Sometimes within the quarter, we have industry like updates and new things that are coming out. So we'll pull together some webinars or different things that we can do to keep our franchisees educated.
That's awesome. I love the brand. You call them a brand standard brand?
Yeah, we have a brand standards department. And so they help with a lot of training. They help with regulatory. So they handle a lot of questions. They're the first contact, and then they can distribute it where it needs to be if it's not something that they can handle themselves.
Carolyn, first off, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. This has been phenomenal, not just because you're such a, warm and embracing person and so real, when people are talking to you, as I would expect. But to our listeners, I want to just go out on a little bit of a limb. There's literally 4,000 to 6,000 franchise systems available right now today. And there are competitors to what you do out there. And I would say, as a person that's neck deep into franchising and look at franchising globally and talk to people all over the world, anybody thinking about being in this space who doesn't talk to you and have a really deep conversation about what you do and what you stand for and how they would fit into that as a franchisee is missing a real opportunity, because it's pretty easy to go out and buy a franchise, but to buy a franchise literally that will change your life and have great supportive partners is just tougher and tougher to find. So that's my little pitch for you and your company, Carolyn. And again, thank you for being here. We'll love to have you back again in the future. Best of luck to you and Charles, and I look forward to us connecting real soon.
Thank you all. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Carolyn, would you like to tell our listeners where they can reach you if they would like to? We're obviously going to have everything put on our Pillars of Franchising page, but how would you like them to reach you if they care to?
So there's different ways. My email is carolyn@wisdomseniorcare.com, or you can visit our website at wisdomseniorcare.com, and you'll find all our contact information there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can just look up Carolyn Thurston, and you'll find me there as well.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. It has been the ultimate pleasure to have you, and we look forward to seeing you. Probably I'll see you next time in Vegas.
Yes, I'm there. Yeah.
So thank you so much. All the best to you and Charles and your team at Senior Wisdom Care.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
Reverse.
That's okay. It's okay. Wisdom Senior Care. Yep. Thank you.
Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thanks.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
Kristin.
You got me, Elizabeth. I feel like on Seinfeld, it's like, Jerry. Oh my God.
Listen, I'm excited about this panel, but wasn't that an amazing interview with the Thurstons, Carolyn?
Yeah, it really, and that's so not my field, though. Part of it is because I would be so emotionally attached to these people. And like she said, they deal with a lot of death. And after going through that with my mom, I just don't know if I could keep picking myself back up afterwards. That would be really hard. But boy, having a passion to take care of people.
It takes a special person, and they're these special people with special gifts.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. And what I love about what Carolyn talked about is they really make sure they attract those people. That's part of the brand. And it's making sure, right? And that making that brand promise and just aligning people with that. Loved. It was so refreshing.
Well, and Karen, I was watching your face a little bit, and I know you desperately wanted to interject something into that interview when she was talking about all the leadership stuff they're doing and the training and the support and just that whole thing, because that's your realm.
And I loved it. And it is so refreshing, again, just to hear someone talk about it and the importance of it, because we all know that leads to sustainable growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And how cool was it that she had somebody, and that was the question I wanted to ask. And then she was able to tell the story about somebody who grew from, from a caregiver to somebody who owns a franchise. I mean, that's the glory of franchising, right? That's your ultimate goal. And I think that was wonderful. But, the one thing that we started off the show with, and we kind of talked about this with Carolyn, and now here we are again, the one thing that they all have in common was kind of that core value of caring for other people, right? And I think that that's what really keeps that 100% engagement. We've talked before about how important having the same values with the organization, with the employees, and making sure that everybody's on the same page. I mean, those things are so critical. Karen, you go into companies all the time, right? And you're meeting with leaders.
Yes.
How do you help wrangle them all around and get them on the same page?
Well, there are a lot of different ways to do it. And it's interesting because, one of the things that we talk with them about, and there are a lot of different ways we do it, but at the end of the day, we do talk about that it's the values, and it's aligning people with the values and getting them aligned on it's the strength of that, if you want to call it the immediate manager, the franchisee, whoever's the one who's really kind of running the ship, the the business. And it doesn't matter if it's a large company, a franchise, whatever. You've got to make sure you've got the strength of that immediate manager, and that people feel like you've got their back.
Right.
And so, and really giving them tools and techniques on that so they can do that, because for some, it's not easy.
I think that's what's missing. You hear about such a shortage of staff around the country, and yet there are segments that are not having that same problem, or specific companies that are not having that same problem. And I think back to Carolyn's point, and Karen has reiterated it, so much of that is culture and the internal core values and those kinds of things, and even a path to ownership or franchisee status or something like that. I quite often, and when Carolyn was talking about it, it really resonated with me, because that's my life, is building organizations where the culture is so strong that it will withstand just about anything.
Critical.
And so, with my chiropractic franchise, the Joint Chiropractic, I'm asked quite often, frankly, because our pricing is so low compared to typical chiropractors, are you only getting new chiropractors out of school that don't have anywhere else to go? Right. Because that's the image. Well, in fact, it's just the polar opposite. Well over 80% of them have anywhere from 7 to 15 or 20 years of experience, but they are burnt out on those other models. They want to come in and work in a place where they only have to do what they originally went to school to do and were trained to do, where their passion is and their love is, which is to care for people and to get them out of pain and so on. And so when you create an atmosphere and a culture where they can do that, and they don't have to deal with all the other sludge that happens in any business, many of them choose to do that in spite of the image changes that they may go through. So I think there's a lot of companies that can go down that path, just as Carolyn has, and we try to do, and they're missing the boat when they don't.
And I also think, go ahead, Kristin.
I was just going to say, I think that's very interesting, Jerry, because I do think you're right. Most people think of that as, the fresh out of school, kind of the budget adjustment or whatever, and like, I don't know if I want them to adjust me. It might be like going to the college and having a student do it, but there's a lot to be said for being able to go to work and just do your job in an environment that allows you to get back to the core of why you went into that field to begin with. Now, the interesting thing with you, with 36 different Great Clips franchises, how do you and Sam, because I know she's your right-hand woman, how do you keep those sets of values kind of consistent amongst all of those salons? Because that's like herding cats.
Yeah, it is. But first off, my whole life is built around having one leader, one champion in each location. You get one person to buy into the vision and the culture, and then it changes their life. And typically we see that through pay and all the other kind of things that go along with that, and just the joy of showing up for their job. And then the people around them start wondering, well, we do the same job. Why are they in a better mood? Why are they making more money? Those kinds of things. And then literally they become the person that helps build your culture within that little node, if you will, that might be 9 hours away from where your home office is or something like that, because that's really the core of it. But the second piece of that, or maybe the first piece, and that is the second piece, they're interchangeable. We do a lot virtually anymore, not only training, but regular weekly meetings with our leadership teams, where we continue to bolster that culture and really reinforce it. When they're having hurdles or stresses in their job, we help as a team take that away or show them a different way to handle it. So none of them feel like they're out on an island creating their own destiny, in a negative way. They've got a path forward to stay with us forever and continue to grow, maybe certainly in pay and benefits, but also maybe in different positions. And I think many companies lose track of that, which is why their culture doesn't transfer to all of their other locations, and you see them struggling.
Jerry, you mentioned a few things. You mentioned as part of culture, even the path, because that's what, any engagement research will talk about. People they want to feel like their values connect. They want to feel like they have a growth path. They want to feel like they can grow professionally and personally. And that's even more so if you think about the millennials, the Gen Z, that is so important to them. And some of that's even more important than pay.
Yep.
And they also want to feel like there is that connection. And it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of, work with organizations where I tell them, don't invest in this if you think it's a check the box, because people know that. You need to be really intentional that it's not just something where check, because they're going to, I always say they're going to sniff that out, especially the younger generations.
Yeah.
Two things. Number one, when we give prizes for achievements, and we give them a variety of things they can choose from if they hit certain things, the number one thing across 2 states, the number one thing that is chosen more than anything else is dinner out with Jerry and Mickey.
Oh,
because they want to hang out with us
Yeah.
for the night and get a chance to visit with us one-on-one and just hang out with us, And the second piece, and we can talk about that in greater detail too. But the second piece that I really want to talk about, we're really proud about this. So many businesses, certainly in hair care, but in anything, you have a job, you show up, you do your job, Christmas comes along, they send you 25 or 50 bucks in the mail, thanks for a year of your work or whatever. Many years ago, we deal with a lot of single moms who work for us, who life becomes a grind, and they're just showing up to get their check, which never goes far enough, and they're dealing with children and all that, and it just turns into major grind. And so years ago, we decided to do something for Christmas way different than pretty much anybody you know of. We throw a monster ball for them. Literally, it's like prom for adults, where we rent out a ballroom in a major hotel near where they're at, and we ask them to dress up in prom gowns. Go out and buy a used prom gown or something like that. We'll have a little bit of entertainment come in for the evening. We'll have a huge buffet. We'll give away big screen TVs and all kinds of cruises and all kinds of cool things. But more than all of that, it's a chance for all of us to hang out together and share our successes. Pat a lot of people on the back for working for us for 15 years or whatever the case might be. And that is not only the most talked about thing amongst our employees, but any of those employees that are involved in the recruiting and hiring process. That's the number one thing they talk about with recruits.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, you can't believe this.
Yes.
It's the connection. So it's the connection they have with the company, the connection they have with leaders, the connection they have with each other. And those are such critical parts to get, because there's that, we always talk about the hearts and the minds, right?
Yeah.
So it's the mind, and we need to get the heart there. So those are parts of it.
Well, I want to mention something about that party, Jerry, because we do a holiday party every year too. And, I have a friend who owns a restaurant. So for a couple of years we went there, and they always they want it to be on a Saturday. So they have all day to get their hair, their nails, because they're cleaning, right? They don't have time to do that any other time. And same thing, they dress up. And so finally, one of them said to me before the third one, do you think that we could choose another restaurant? And I said, absolutely. Where do you guys want to go? And they're like, we'd really like to go to a Mexican restaurant. And if we could find a place that has the mariachis, that would be great. And if there's room to dance. And I'm like, heck yeah. So the restaurant that they chose is great, because every Saturday we have the mariachis and we have this big long table, and there's not a great deal of room to dance, but they find room to dance. And just as you said, that is the talk of the town all the time. And now, even when we do smaller parties in the office, I sent some video to Elizabeth. They have the music playing and they are dancing.
I love it.
And it is so much fun. And that's, it's part of it is because we let them decide, what do you want to eat? What's your thing, right? They're 100% Hispanic. They all want that food. They want their music. We have a blast. My kids go and they just love it. And so I think that's, again, when we talked before, Karen, about meeting people where they are, that all goes back to the values again, right?
It really, it does. It does. And finding ways to connect. I love it, because having fun, especially right now with all the stress that's going on, in the world, if the more we can just give them glimpses and moments of connection and fun and enjoyment, it helps reduce that stress.
Well, and all organizations should be doing something. They may not all do the things that we do or Kristin does or whatever, but they need to be doing something, because building a culture, making sure people understand your core values is not a check the box thing, as has been mentioned here. You got to live it. It's got to be out there for everybody to see and feel every day, or else it goes away. So staying in contact. The world we live in now, so much is virtual, which has really made it a lot easier to do. You know, another thing, we've got a Facebook page for our staff, and it is only for us to share successes and congratulations. And one of their favorite things is when I go on and do a leadership video that they can watch, because it's out of the norm. It's something they don't get anywhere else. It's kind of like feeding them, right? To some extent, feeding their soul. So hearing from the founder, giving some wisdom. They know that I travel with IFA and I'm on some boards and all that, which to them seems pretty cool. To me, it seems tiring, but they think it's pretty cool. So when I go out of my way to take time to do that, Carolyn's smiling. A year and a half ago, we were in Washington, D.C. for an IFA event, and we were on a rooftop somewhere. That's really where I met Carolyn and Charles the first time. And I stepped over in the corner, and in the background was the Capitol Dome, and I talked to them on that video about, I was in Washington, D.C., talking to our leaders about things that impacted them and their lives and their children's lives. And oh my gosh, you can't believe the feedback we got out of that simple video.
Yeah. But you connected with them. And I think that's part of it. It's that, how do we find ways to say, I'm connected with you. I have your back. I'm here because of this business and you and what we stand for. I mean, people like that. We want that. And it's become way more prevalent now. I think after, even though I say after COVID, but even where we are right now, after what we've gone through the past couple of years, people, they want that now more than ever. They need to have that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, do either of you have any closing thoughts on this topic? I mean, we could honestly go on for hours. I think it's such a great topic and so timely right now as well.
And all I'll say is it's not fluffy. I think too many people think it's fluffy stuff. It's not. It really, it's bottom line. It can really, absolutely, it can make or break a business.
Yeah, and two things I'll say in closing and then turn it back to you, Kristin. Number one is, and we've talked about this before, if I walk in the door and the toilet's dirty and they're busy, I go clean the toilet, because that's a part of culture too, showing that we're all on the same team, we're all working together. I cannot tell you how many dump trucks of hair that I've swept while my stylists are doing their thing. And the standing joke is with clients in the room is, it's the only thing I'm qualified to do inside of those four walls. They're the queens of it. They're the experts. So we joke about that. The second thing I would point out is, how cool is it that the three of us get to have this panel right after we've talked to Carolyn Thurston, who is kind of the queen of culture and building it from within, and all just went together. So thanks to everybody for participating today. It was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
As usual, thank you for joining Pillars of Franchising. We appreciate every single one of you. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors, the Titus Center for Franchising at Palm Beach Atlantic University. You can find them on the college's website. Also, Franchise Show 247, which can be found at franchiseshow247.com. We couldn't do it without our sponsors, and we appreciate their support. Don't forget, we'd love to have calling guests. Our number to call in is 323-580-5755. That is 323-580-5755. If you have questions for our guests or for any of our $1 Million Mentors, we welcome you to call in at any time on the show. We will do our very best to answer your calls. Stay tuned, more coming up.
And with that, we want to thank all of you for joining us on the show today with our guest, Carolyn Thurston, and Charles Thurston's in the background over there somewhere with Wisdom Senior Care. Please be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode, as well as any others that you might stumble across. Thank you to Jerry Akers and Ray Pillar, our $1 Million Mentors, Karen Kimsey-Sword, our leadership guru, and of course, to Fred McMurray and Elizabeth Denham, our producers. I am Kristin Selmeczy, and together we are your resource for franchising success. This has been another episode of Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here.